Hey everybody,
Hello,
this is Aiden,
and Larry.
and we're here to chat about Afterthoughts.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a day in real life when we're recording this since you preached on Sunday.
Yes,
Again, we're going through Ecclesiastes
yes.
and hearing what the teacher has to say. And interestingly enough, last week was pretty low, I would say. He didn't feel great. And this week, actually, in the passage, he seems to start to sort a little bit of some of his stuff out. And so why don't you guys actually read that together? Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verses 17 to 26, and just discuss anything that stands out to you or that you have questions about or that resonates with you. Have that discussion together. And so, Larry, for those who maybe weren't here on Sunday, could you just give like a brief recap of the journey you took us on and what you preached on and some of those highlights for your sermon?
I can try.
Yeah.
Ecclesiastes 2, 17 to 26 breaks itself down into two sections. There's 17 to 23, where he very clearly is holding nothing back regarding how he really feels about his experiment and existential meaning. He hates life, he hates work, he uses words like grievous and despair.
Yeah.
He talks about how he can't even sleep at night, how his mind won't let him rest because he keeps trying to problem solve. If you were to read this simply at face value, you would say that this guy is deeply depressed. You would say he's got a heavy case of cynicism, and that he is really struggling with life and probably shouldn't be put in front of a mic because he's not going to say anything encouraging at all. But the turning point is in verse 24, 25, and 26, where he makes a shift in his focus from trying to find meaning in all of the things of life and realizing it's all smoke and there's nothing you can really find meaning therein, and his struggle with his disappointment in that realization of that journey. But then at 24, he begins to shift back to God. And when he makes that shift back to God, the tone changes dramatically. The NIV says that there's nothing better than to enjoy food and drink because these come from the hand of God. Interestingly, in the original language, the Hebrew word for good occurs 4 times in those three verses, which I believe is intentional. It offsets the 4 meaninglessness of the previous section of verses 17 to 23. And there is good in this world. I mean, this is not just the Lord of the Rings quote. This is the biblical validation, and Tolkien was well rooted in the scriptures and a Christian worldview. There's a lot of good in the world, and I think our task as followers of Jesus is to recognize that goodness and to rejoice in it, and to not get caught up in trying to pursue what's next, but to simply experience the simple pleasures and delight of the goodness that is available in our daily lives. Broad strokes, that's the summary.
Yeah, well, that's great. Thank you. The one thing that I love about Ecclesiastes is, even though at times Solomon can seem like he's having a midlife crisis and he's just spiraling downward, and you're just reading the ramblings of someone who's not doing too well, I do appreciate the honesty he has with how he feels, that he's very real. And the one thing that resonates for me about that is often for us, whether you've hit that point or not, there will come a point where you will feel a similar honesty of assessing the things of life and being like, what is the point? What are these things? And here in particular, he talks about work, which is something most of us spend most of our lives doing.
A disproportionate amount of life is spent working.
And something that even God commands way back in the beginning in Genesis as something that's not a bad thing, but actually something we were created to do. But here, Solomon is spiraling and looking at work, and especially looking at the results and saying, wow, even if I do good work, what does it matter in the end? Because I can't control who takes over my good work afterwards. And what if they're a fool and they blow it all up? And like you said in your sermon, there's so many companies and stuff that we can think of where that was the story. And so for you guys, the first question that I would love for you to discuss is actually this. Have you ever struggled with feeling like your work or efforts are meaningless? What did that look like? And then secondly, we would love for you guys to discuss this next. The author of Ecclesiastes suggests that contentment with what God gives can lead to joy. Do you agree with this? Why or why not? You talk about a book in your sermon, a book that I actually really love called You Are What You Love by James K.A. Smith. It's a really great book. In fact, it's one of my favorite youth ministry books because he actually spends quite a bit of time talking about youth ministry in that book and what people often do in ministry says about what is the most important thing to them in the ministry.
Yes.
And so I really do love Smith as an author, but he has this great, which isn't original to his own, but essentially analysis of our lives of we are what we love, and the things we do and the things we desire often reveal what is really true about us, because everybody has the things they say that are true, the things that they say they really desire, but actually their actions or the things they're actually chasing after when you look at it can often say a different story. And so we wanted you guys to discuss this, but I actually wanted to throw it to Larry first. Obviously you have experienced this, we all have, of having desires or things we're pursuing that reveal to us maybe a deeper layer that's going on. So you got to be a little bit vulnerable, I guess, in this question. But is there anything in particular that you've noticed, even in yourself recently, something that you've noticed you desire or something that you're pursuing subconsciously that when you actually step back and have a look at it, you're like, oh, that's very interesting of what that's revealing. Whether it's positive of being like, it's actually really good, or whether it's something a little bit negative of being like, oh, that's actually not the thing that I want to pursue or should be desiring. I actually need to correct that. Does anything come to mind for you?
That's a great question. The first thing that comes to mind for me is my love of pastoring. Officially, I quote-unquote retired on December 31st of last year. Yeah. But what I had missed in the 8 years of being the regional minister was pastoring. Well, I had moments of it and going into churches for cell celebrations or an opportunity to engage people at the level of soul. For the most part, my job was administrative management, problem solving, putting out fires, dealing with crises, going into congregational meetings that no one else wanted to go into, that nobody who wasn't on drugs should have gone into. So those were the hard things. And so when I came to the end of that role, it's like, I am done this role, but I don't think I'm done in ministry, and I don't think I'm done pastoring. And so when the call came to come here to SBC to step into this interim role, I had to really test my heart. Am I wanting to do this because it's my desire? I want to pastor, and so I get to go back and do that again. But am I making it about me and my hunger and my desire? Or am I really hearing from Jesus that this is the right time, the right place for me to step back into this role, to come and care for the people of Summerland Baptist Church? And that took a long time for me to wrestle through, because my desire is something that can easily be masked as a godly desire when it's not godly at all. It's selfish, and I think our struggle is that a lot of our desires can be neutral desires. They can be masked as godly desires when they're not godly at all. They're not a step of the Spirit. They're just about my own hunger, what I want. And we can subtly make it about us and not about Jesus, not about keeping in step. So I had to really pray that through and think that through for a long time to make sure that my hunger, my desire was within the timing of Jesus. It was His voice calling me. It was not about what I get to do or not do. it was about what he wanted me to do and where he wanted me to be. And so that would be the first example that really pops into my mind.
So good. Yeah, it's interesting how often we do have to weigh those things. Even things that seem good on the surface, you still have to weigh. Is there actually some kind of disjointedness in it? Where
exactly.
It could seem like the spiritual and the good thing to take on a pastoral role, but actually there could be some kind of false motive behind it.
Exactly.
That maybe you're not even aware of, that you got to ask yourself for.
Yeah.
And so for you guys, you're actually going to ask yourselves that. And so your next question is this. Our desires often uncover what we truly love. If you're honest, what do your current desires or dissatisfactions say about what matters most to you right now? And then lastly, you kind of concluded your sermon with 3 different ways to kind of grow in contentment and to grow in being able to enjoy the good things that God has given us here on earth, like Solomon talks about. And you specifically named 3 different things that you talked about: gratitude, and you talked about perspective, and you talked about faithfulness. And can you just unpack those 3 things just a little bit so that people have an idea as to what that looks like when you're saying that those 3 words are things that are helpful in actually growing in this gratitude, perspective, and faithfulness?
All of those are habits of spiritual formation, because everything we do shapes our soul. So the habits of our lives, just as the desires of our lives, really reflect on what's going on, what's important to us, what's molding us, what's shaping us. So we begin with gratitude, because if we're thankful for things, contentment grows. When we're not thankful for things, then we constantly wonder about what's next, or what it could have been, or why didn't I get something else. But if I practice gratitude, if I build that into my day, into my life, and into a regular practice of expressing thanks, not only am I keeping in step and being obedient to the scriptures that overwhelmingly call us to be thankful to the Lord, and thankful for what He's given, thankful for His people, thankful for His presence. But it molds us and shapes us at the level of souls. We're thankful for the people around us, and thankful for the beauty of the earth, and thankful for the simple things that fill our days, not always fixated on what I don't have, is to stop and reflect and to give gratitude for what I do have. The aspect of shifting focus, again, the natural inclination of our hearts is to focus on us, just as the electrical gauge in your battery-driven car, the gas gauge in your car, constantly shifts from full to empty. My soul, your soul, everyone's soul shifts from the Lord to us. And it happens quickly. And we need to constantly reshift that focus from ourselves back to God. And the way that we shift that focus is by coming to the place of either memorizing Scripture, engaging in a time of prayer, coming to a place of worship where we're engaging music that takes our heart, our mind, our soul, and puts the focus back on the Lord. And for me, because of the fact that I'm ADHD, which, by the way, so are you, and so is a disproportionate number of our congregation, we need all the help that we can get for those simple little practices of, am I concerned about the things of life, or am I in tune and focused on the Lord of life? Am I focusing on my needs and my desires, or am I focusing on the one who is bigger than my needs and my desires, and who promises to be with me? And so what I do is I have at the top of my to-do list a couple of simple questions. Where's my focus? Remember the Lord. Give thanks. Because I find that as I go down that list and check things off and do the things I need to do, I need to reinforce those habits and those practices. And I've been doing this for decades, and I still need to do it because I forget. I just have too many squirrels in my head, and they just clamor, and they take me in all kinds of places. So I need every bit of help I can get. But the last thing is just being faithful in the seasons of life, or faithful in the stage of life you find yourself in. And what I find in my own life and the lives of people I know well and observe is the faithfulness and And the practices of faithfulness, those spiritual formational practices, the times of prayer, the times in the Word, the times in fellowship, the time in silence, the time in worship, the time in service, the time in giving, molds me and shapes me at the level of soul and gives me the ability to put this season of life in perspective and to remember that there's someone over it all. Mm. But if I don't do that, then the season of life warps and changes my practices of faithfulness. Mm. And the way that I frame that for people is either our practice of faithfulness will help us to be faithful in the season we're in, or we're going to allow the season we're in to undermine and subvert our practice of faithfulness. And COVID's a big example of that. A staggering number of people in the season of COVID allowed the season to undermine their practice of faithfulness. Yeah. And they're paying the price of it. Mm-hmm. Whereas those of us who found a way to prioritize prayer, prioritize the Word, prioritize communion, prioritize service, even when we were restricted in doing so, found that our practices of faithfulness enabled us to cope with the season. Yeah. And really, that's the key to life.
That's so good. And so, lastly, for y'all to discuss, Larry talked about how when we grow in gratitude, perspective, and faithfulness, our work and efforts become a joy. Which of these three areas do you feel God inviting you to grow in? Mm. What would growth in this area practically look like? Well, thanks, Larry.
Thank you, Aiden.
That's it for this week. Thank you guys for joining us.
God bless.
Yeah, we'll see you next week. Not with you, though.
Not with me next week.
Somebody else will be in this chair.
I'll be back in 2 weeks. Mm-hmm.